In the climate-controlled basement of the Minnesota Historical Society, archivist Dr. Sarah Caldwell carefully handled a recently donated collection of glass plate negatives from the late 19th century. The donation came from the estate of the Preston family, once prominent merchants in Paul during the railroad boom. "These appear to be in remarkable condition," she told her assistant Marcus as she held one plate up to the light. The negative showed a formal family portrait, a stern father in a tailored suit, a mother in Victorian dress, and 3 children arranged before their impressive home. A typical 1897 family portrait, notable only for its clarity. During digital scanning, they noticed something strange. In the second-floor window, partly hidden by lace curtains, was a gaunt, expressionless face watching the family. "That's odd," Marcus said, zooming in. Family records listed only 3 children, all present in the photo. "Music," Dr. Caldwell leaned closer. "Check the 1895 and 1900 census records. See if another family member or worker lived there." The search turned up nothing. Yet the plate clearly showed someone else in the house, someone the records had forgotten or erased. "We've found something that needs more investigation," she said. Photographic conservator Raymond Chen placed the original glass negative on his table. With special lighting and a high-resolution microscope, he examined the figure in the window. "No double exposure or manipulation," he told Dr. Caldwell. "The emulsion is consistent. Whoever was in that window was there when the photo was taken." "Could it be a reflection or defect?" she asked. Raymond shook his head. "The detail is too clear. This was a person. The family's pose on the lawn showed it was a planned portrait. Music, why would they let someone appear in the window?" "Perhaps they didn't know," Raymond said. Newspapers from 1897 described the Prestons as pillars of St. Paul's society. Augustus Preston made his money in railroads and lumber. His wife Victoria worked in social reform. Their children Edward, Lillian, and Thomas appeared often in society pages. Music, nowhere was another household member mentioned. "The Preston house still stands, doesn't it?" Raymond asked. "Yes, it's a museum now," Dr. Caldwell replied. Restored to its 1,892 look, they decided to visit the Preston House Museum on Summit Avenue, kept its brick front and ornate woodwork carefully restored. Curator Eliza Montgomery listened with interest as they explained the discovery. The house was built in 1883. The Prestons bought it in 1891 and lived there until 1910. They climbed to the second-floor room that matched the window in the photo. "This was a sewing room in the Preston years," Eliza said. "Later a nursery for their youngest son Thomas, born in 1894. Dr. Caldwell showed the enhanced image. "We found someone in this window during a 1897 family portrait. Would staff have been working here while the family was photographed?" Eliza frowned. "Unlikely. Staff stayed out of sight during formal portraits, and this room wasn't for them." Raymond asked about other family members. "The Prestons had 3 children, all in the picture," Eliza said. Then she paused. "Unless something is in Augustus Preston's private letters." She brought an archival box of letters. He wrote regularly to his brother in Boston. One letter from February 1897 mentions a delicate family situation needing medical care at home. "I never understood it." The letter showed the Prestons were hiding someone they did not want known. The team went to the Ramsey County Medical Society archives. Dr. Caldwell gained permission to view patient records linked to the Prestons. The ledger of Dr. William Harper, who treated St. Paul's wealthy families, ran from 1890 to 1905. Entries for the Prestons began in December 1896, called to Preston residents regarding eldest daughter, patient shows concerning symptoms after return from European tour, family asks for complete discretion. Later notes recorded regular visits through 1897, always calling the patient only the patient. Treatments matched those used then for mental conditions. "No record of an eldest daughter," Raymond said. Dr. Caldwell pulled a birth registry from 1876. "I found this earlier and set it aside because she vanishes from later records. Margaret Preston, born 20 years before the photograph." The last entry in Dr. Harper's ledger, November 1897, read, "Patient transferred to Oakwood Sanatorium. Prognosis uncertain. Family asks continued confidentiality." Oakwood was a private asylum outside the city where wealthy families sent relatives they wanted, kept from public view. The asylum was demolished in the 1940s, but its records survived in the state archives. The researchers found an entry dated November 15, 1897. Patient Margaret Preston, age 21, admitted at family request. Diagnosis: hysteria and nervous exhaustion after European travel. Prognosis: guarded. Admission came only weeks after the family portrait. Something on the European trip had led first to home confinement, then to the institution. Society pages from April 1896 noted that Miss Margaret Preston, daughter of industrialist Augustus Preston, left for a grand tour with her aunt Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield. No notice announced her return. Instead, an August 1896 item said Mrs. Whitfield had returned and reported that her niece chose to stay longer in Switzerland for the alpine air. A clear cover story. Oakwood records listed treatment for neurasthenia, a broad diagnosis often given to women whose behavior was judged improper. The final entry, April 2003, 1898, stated, "Patient deceased following respiratory infection. Family notified. Body released for private burial." She died 5 months after admission. The portrait was taken September 30, 1897, while she was still at home, confined to the second-floor sewing room, watching from the window as her family posed. Dr. Caldwell searched European archives. Passenger lists showed Margaret Preston returning on the SS Germanic in July 1896 with her aunt. A colleague at the British National Archives found letters Eleanor Whitfield wrote to her husband during the tour. Most described ordinary sightseeing. Then, a May 1896 letter from Paris. A most distressing development with Margaret. The young Italian artist she met in Florence has followed us to Paris. I have forbidden her to see him, but she grows defiant. I fear Augustus will blame me. A June letter was worse. The situation has become untenable. She confessed an inappropriate attachment to the artist, a man of no standing. Worse, there may be consequences to her imprudence. I am bringing her home at once. Please alert Augustus that his intervention will be required. She had become involved with a man her family rejected, and she may have been pregnant. Catastrophic for a young woman of her class in 1896. Returning to Dr. Harper's notes with this knowledge, they saw remedies usually given after childbirth. She had a child, Dr. Caldwell whispered, during those months of seclusion. They searched church records across street, Paul, for any birth linked to the Prestons in late 1896 or early 1897. Nothing appeared in the family's Presbyterian church. In a small Catholic parish on the city's east side, they found an entry from January 18, 97. Baptized Thomas Joseph Conti, born December 28, 1896. Mother Margaret, no surname. Father unknown. Witness Sister Mary Catherine. Child placed at St. Mary's Orphan Asylum. Conti is an Italian name. The Prestons' youngest son was also named Thomas, officially born in 1894. St. Mary's records confirmed the infant's arrival. The note said only that a religious sister brought him, the mother could not care for him, and the father was presumed Italian. In April 1897, a final note stated the child was adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Gabriel Foster of Chicago. The boy was sent far away so no one would link him to the Prestons. Meanwhile, Margaret stayed hidden in the house while the rest of the family resumed normal life. Normal enough to commission a formal portrait with her watching from behind the curtain. The photographer was Emmett Wilson, who ran a successful St. Paul's studio from 1880 to 1915. His grandson, retired Professor James Wilson, still held the business records and a personal journal. The entry for September 30, 1897 read, "Preston Family Portrait, Summit Avenue, light excellent. Family cooperative, except Mr. Preston unusually agitated. Noticed movement at second-floor window during exposure but could not stop. Mentioned it afterward. Mr. Preston became severe, insisted I sell him the negative, offered 3 times my usual fee. Accepted payment but made a duplicate before delivery. Most curious situation." He had seen her, and Augustus tried to suppress the evidence. The photographer kept a copy anyway. Another journal note from December 1897 said, "Received news that Preston daughter died at Oakwood. Connected it to the unusual portrait session. Will keep the duplicate but not print or display it out of respect for family privacy. Some truths belong to history, not the present." He understood he had captured something important. A medical historian from the University of Minnesota, Dr. Eleanor Wexler, reviewed the limited records. The symptoms and treatments pointed to postpartum depression, possibly severe postpartum psychosis. Care in 1897 was crude and often harmful. Sedation, isolation, cold water therapies that made conditions worse. Margaret had given birth in secret, lost her child at once, and been kept isolated while suffering mental distress. When home care failed, the family sent her to Oakwood, where she died months later of a reported respiratory infection. Though institutional neglect or harsh treatments may have played a part, the photograph caught her after the birth and forced adoption during home confinement before her final removal. That face in the window may be the only photographic proof Margaret Preston ever existed. 6 months later, the Minnesota Historical Society opened an exhibition titled Visible, Invisible, Hidden Lives in Victorian Minnesota. At its center stood the Preston family portrait, enhanced to show the face in the window, beside a timeline of Margaret's life pieced together through careful research. Dr. Caldwell told the audience, "History is often built from the stories powerful people choose to tell. Sometimes technology and persistence let us recover voices that were deliberately erased." The display covered the full research path, from the strange figure in the window to Margaret's European romance, secret pregnancy, and early death, and placed it in the wider context of how late 19th century families handled scandals involving young women. "We will never know the complete truth of Margaret Preston's life," Dr. Caldwell said. "We do not know if she agreed to give up her child or even knew what happened to him. We do not know the name of the Italian artist or whether he ever learned he had a son. What we do know is that a young woman's life and choices were judged so unacceptable that her own family tried to erase her from history." A journalist asked about the child. Thomas Joseph Foster grew up in Chicago, became an architect, and lived until 1972. Raymond answered he never knew his true origins. He had 3 children. Their descendants live across the Midwest. "We have contacted some of them. They were surprised to learn this part of their family story." After the opening, Dr. Caldwell stood alone before the enlarged photograph. Margaret's face looked out at the world that had tried to forget her. There was sadness in her expression, but also a quiet defiance, a determination to be seen, if only for the fraction of a second needed to expose a photographic plate. In that unguarded moment, captured by chance, she made certain that someday someone would notice her absence and bring her story back into the light.